There's a reason and rhyme for every dead man's right. There's a gun for the wrong and there's a gun for the fight. If your hand's in your pocket, then there's no way to stop it on the floor. It goes 1, 2, 3, and you're coming with me. Get on the floor. Flap, 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 flap with the pull of the trigger. Got my hands in the air and the smoke is getting thicker on the floor. Get on the floor. It goes 1, 2, 3, and you're coming with me. Get on the floor. They got a gun and they're shaking us down. They got a gun and they're shaking us down on the floor. Get on the floor. It goes 1, 2, 3, and you're coming with me. Get on the floor. Baby, baby, can't you see how you're locked up, but you think that you're free? Got a piece on your hips and a promise on your lips. Rather do the hustle than to see the devil's twist. 1, 2, 3, and you're coming with me. Get on the floor. They got a gun and they're shaking us down. They got a gun and they're shaking us down on the floor. Get on the floor. It goes 1, 2, 3, and you're coming with me. Get on the floor. They got a gun. They got a gun on the floor, the floor, the floor. Get on the floor. It goes 1, 2, 3, and you're coming with me. Get on the floor. It goes 1, 2, 3, and you're coming with me. Get on the floor. It goes 1, 2, 3, and you're coming with me. Get on the floor. Dankeschön.
Maya Weisinger with Get on the Floor. I welcome everyone to our panel discussion today in our concert on art and peace. Hola a Colombia. Welcome from the Paulinum. Welcome from the Paulinum in Leipzig to all our guests here and to all our guests in the world. We will share tonight as I said, panel discussion on the impact art, artwork, culture can have in post-conflict countries or in conflicts around the world, with a specific focus on Bosnia-Herzegovina, Colombia, but also we will look into how art can overcome maybe discrimination and can build resilience, the potential of art for building bridges, but maybe also the risks and limits of art in separating or in risking to provoke something which is not yet healed after a conflict which costed victims. I have actually invited a lot of guests today. My name is Solveig Richter, and I'm the Heisenberg Professor for International Relations and Transnational Politics here at the University of Leipzig. I welcome, first of all, my guests in Colombia, Lucia Gonzalez. She's the commissioner at the moment at the Truth Commission, but she has quite a impressive career behind her. She's actually an architect and she has lots of experience in social and cultural work, both in the private sector and in the public sector. She was a director of several cultural institutions like the Teatro Pablo Tobón Uribe in Medellin, like the Philharmonic Orchestra in Medellin, and as well a museum in Antioquia. She has also been a regional director of the National Victims Unit in Antioquia. And she has worked for the Office of the High Commissioner for Peace in Colombia. I also welcome at the later stage from Colombia, Maria Catalina Prieto. She's the director executive of the Philharmonic Orchestra of Medellin. And she will introduce at a later stage to us the Coro Reconciliación, the Reconciliation Corps. I welcome Ado Hasanovic. Ado Hasanovic is a film director from Bosnia and Herzegovina. He was born in Srebrenica, and he will share tonight with us his both personal experience, but also the way he was able to deal with the conflict, and through filmmaking, actually. And we have Maja Weisinger. She's currently the program coordinator in Culture Action Europe, and she has worked as a community engagement practitioner with a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion in Minneapolis in the United States. She has written her master thesis, actually, on remembrance, on Erinnerungskultur, as we say in Germany, and will bring to us as well tonight a bit of academic knowledge on how art and peace can be linked, or how can it work. We also have a lot of, we will not only talk tonight, right? As you see, it's about art, so we will have also artwork here. We had also already a nice song from Maja Weisinger. We will also watch some movies, short movies from Ado Hasanovic, and one actually which was produced at the university in Erfurt, at the Brand School in Erfurt. But we will also have a concert from the Coro Reconciliación. So, I would like to start with my colleague Lucia. Lucia, in Colombia, actually, you are now working at the, let's say, Truth Commission to find not only the truth of the conflict, but also to bring many people together. But your experience dates back to quite a long time, and you have also lived and experienced how culture and art can both survive during conflict, but also how conflict and violence can have an impact on culture and conflict. So, Lucia, my first question on you: how could communities resist with art during the conflict, and how was the violent conflict impacting on art and culture?
Alba, muchas gracias.
Alba, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for that invitation. That beautiful city. I will return one day. Thank you very much to the Capaz Institute, which has been our partner here in Colombia always for peace. The Colombo-German Institute for Peace. And here we are to talk about art and culture in these scenarios of building peace. Well, it is known to everyone that the war in Colombia has been a very long-lasting war. The last armed conflict lasted approximately 56, 58 years, more or less, or 60 according to where we locate its beginnings. And obviously, this has touched us all. Such an extensive war is a war that actually touches all of us, and especially it has effects and it leaves a footprint on culture. So in that sense of the word, not only, I have always believed that art is a very powerful means. I think it's a language that is capable of telling us many things, of actually name the unnameable, making the invisible visible, of giving a voice to those people that have been marginalized by the mass media communication outlets. And apart from this, art allows to get closer into more sensitive issues, more from the heart, to realities that are very, very difficult to grasp, and that very possibly when we deal with them from the academic sector or from political sectors, they produce resentment or they produce polarization. And many countries continue to live in that polarization. So we are highly trusting in that art language. But I also wanted to tell you that in the Truth Commission, we have defined a strategy, a cultural and arts strategy that is very in the middle of the commission. I think this is the first time that a commission puts so much attention in this specific affair. And fundamentally speaking, we're asking ourselves, what are the affairs related to culture that have made the armed conflict to be deep-rooted in Colombia? And it's developed in such a cruel way and has been so difficult to end this armed conflict. In fact, we ended this last peace agreement and we're still not ending with this armed conflict. And on the other hand, we asked ourselves, what have been the damage of the armed conflict on culture itself. The truth is that the survival of the conflict has made us normalize many things, that many of the values have become confused in the midst of this tragedy that we have lived, a humanitarian crisis of enormous proportions. We have more than 9 million victims, and they are cross-cutting in every social sector, and there we have seen damage in culture. And what damage are we talking about? We're talking about pain in culture, as Freud mentioned. And we also asked ourselves about those things, about those questions that even in the midst of armed conflict have come about as values and as opportunities to oppose war, to resist. And the third line is a very special attention to artistic and cultural practices throughout the country, and especially not only from the artists that do arts with a capital A, but those artistic expressions that come about from the souls of the peoples, which are the sincere and poetic expressions of the soul of peoples, and that has helped them to narrate their pains, but also to narrate their expectations, their desires, their dreams, their hopes. So I think that we're not inaugurating anything. Art has always played a fundamental role, a very important role in the construction of a memory, of putting in evidence or making it evident. I say that Goya, when with the Monsters of Reasons, or with the shootings on May 3rd, or the war with Picasso, or the movie related to Schindler's List by Steven Spielberg, art has actually showed us what was not able to be shown before. It's a bit of that shield, that Perseus shield that allows us to fight against that Medusa-headed dragon via a reflection. It allows us to see war. It allows us to get closer to things without actually considering that terror that would make us run away. But it allows us to reflect very deeply, and it also allows us to understand how the armed conflict is lived in each of the cultures and each of the communities. And therefore, we have stimulated this. We have read what they've told us from art, and we've read that, and we continue to produce cultural and art that will allow us to have that final report in a language that can be in the reach of many. Thank you, Alba. And I also want to tell you that I'm super happy that the Philharmonic Orchestra is going to be here. A very special greeting to Maria Catalina and that beautiful project, that orchestra that I love with all my heart.
Thank you so much, Lucia. You spoke of cultural practices, that communities can use during the conflict. So my question is, can you give us some examples from your experience, how cultural practices were able during the conflict to bring both communities together, or to overcome the, let's say, cruelties that the violent conflict has brought in Colombia?
Sí, pues yo digo
yes. Well, I say that it's not an invention, nobody's invention. It's actually a need that communities have that actually becomes poetry, poetic acts. For example, there are rituals in the river, or rituals surrounding food, or rituals surrounding healing practices, like, for example, in indigenous First Nation communities, especially related to protection, or cultural practices related to protection surrounding the mamos, or the wise men in the communities, or wise women that strengthen communities, that strengthen bonds and links and generate self-protection, which is very important. The chants, the singing, collective chants, collective dances have actually served to heal, to strengthen communities, to reaffirm identities that we have always said that communities that have the strongest bonds and links amongst themselves are able to protect themselves in a better fashion against the armed conflict, especially by the to protect themselves from the armed actors. And we can, and not lose their identity, which is the place where they're deep rooted in their culture.
Thank you so much, Lucia. I can only say how important that is, and having experienced on my own these kind of cultural practices in Colombia, what power of bringing together these cultural practices can actually have, of singing, of coming together, and of dancing. I want to go to ask Ado as well. Ado, you have experienced conflict and the hardship of conflict on your own. Ado, you were born in Srebrenica. You were still a very young boy at the moment when the genocide happened in Srebrenica, but your whole family was affected, your father, your grandfather, and the way you started to deal with was art, actually. Before you tell us your story, you brought us a film, actually, Ado, The Angel of Srebrenica. And we will watch this film together. And before we start, let me just quote one, well, relatively famous, I think, reviewer who was saying about the film Angel of Srebrenica. Angel of Srebrenica is an artistic jewel. When tragedy is too immense for human sensibilities to sanely negotiate it, only poetic metaphor and music can help us to comprehend what human beings have done to each other. This film is a testament to the transformative power of art and should be a celebration of Ado and the other young creative people of the town to at least begin to confront, absorb, and move on from the past. So let us watch Angel of Srebrenica. Ado, you choose to show us this movie. Why? What does this movie means for you, and how has filmmaking helped you to memorialize what happened in Srebrenica, or to deal on a personal level with it?
Thank you. I'm honored to be here and to speak, to be one of the panelists. Also, hello for the friends in Colombia. And it's actually, this is my first short film that I made in 2010. And actually, I made it before even I finished or attended any film academy. And I didn't knew actually that much about directing or film crew and anything. But it was some kind of the desire to make film about Angel and to connect it with my hometown, Srebrenica. I was a kid, I was 6 years old when war started in Srebrenica. Actually, I was living in a village close there that is called Glogova. And then together with my parents, we escaped that village. We went to Srebrenica, and actually from 1992, when we escaped, for next 10 years we were refugees. It was hell. Not only the age, the years during the war, but war is still today in heads of the people in my country. War is only stopped. It's not finished. There is no winner in Yugoslav wars. There are the potential country, Yugoslavia, where I was born. I cannot say that I am Yugoslav anymore. I mean, I could say it to be I don't know, to bring that kind of the nostalgia. But you know, today I am citizen from Bosnia and Herzegovina. This is what wars creates, that divide and separate countries. And yeah, my projection of angel is a ballerine. I think all of you have your own projection of your angel. And I think speaking about war and conflict, you don't need words. What I wrote here, yeah, art makes you shiver. Art makes you different kind of emotion, like you are happy, you are sad, you are crying, you are angry, but art never makes you neutral, never. Always creates some kind of emotion, and that's the power of the art. And yeah, that's what
we also saw when we watched Angel of Srebrenica. But tell me, how has it also helped? I mean, you're working now also on a new project, which will also a film about your father. And with this film, you also want to build memories. I mean, you want to also keep the memories about what happened in Srebrenica. So tell us what also filmmaking can, not only producing emotions, but also what filmmaking can add to building memories and to keeping kind of the memory of Srebrenica.
Actually, you know, sometimes speaking about Srebrenica and conflict and war, genocide, ethnic cleansing, it's really heavy. It's heavy sometimes to be from Srebrenica. It's difficult. So after that, I made this film. Then I entered in Film Academy in Sarajevo. Then I finished that Film Academy. Then I went in Rome in National Film Academy. I also specialized as film director. Then I finished also a master in dramaturgy at Third Academy. And you know, all the time I was making projects that are not connected with the war, because I think I just wanted to show myself. I want to be a director, not to be connected with Srebrenica. I don't want to, you know, to be recognized. Okay, Ado from Srebrenica. I always, you know, and sometimes you need. I want to read these things. The famous Spanish film director Luis Buñuel, one of my favorite directors, he stated that a person should start losing memories, even only in parts, to understand that memories are what makes our lives. Life without memories is not life. Our memories are our connection, our reason, our feelings, even our action. Without that, we are nothing. So I want to say that also memory is a very important part of my life as well. And I agree with Buñuel that our memories makes us who we are. Although there is another side of the story. If a man remembered everything all the time, life would become impossible. So, some memories need to be suppressed so that a person can continue to live his life the way he wants to. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche said that it is important that a person be able to remember certain things at the right time, but also to know how to forget at the right time. The absence of memory would incapacitate a man, but if a man remembered everything, it would also incapacitate him.
But what does this mean concretely for the filmmaking now about your father?
Actually, I was running away from myself for all these years. And my father was amateur cameraman in Srebrenica. He wrote also diaries. I mean, very important material that was never published. And it was always very emotional for me to take this material and to make it all the time people telling me, you have gold in your hands. But you know, it's very personal and everything. So I started to work on my film, and from 2017, I started to film my father. That he tells me how he survived, actually. That he tell me what happened, how he, you know. And then actually, I even couldn't finish filming him because last year he died at 58. And from the beginning of this year, I started to work with Italian film production on this project, and it's really, how to say, it's strong, it's emotional, but I think it will help me to close a very important chapter of my life, and let's say that I could in future make films maybe that I would love to do.
Thank you, Ado. That brings us also remembering or closing chapters to Maya. Maya, you have done your master thesis and you have researched about the remembrance culture, Erinnerungskultur, here in Germany, but also what art can add to this. We have a very strong, actually, discussion here in Germany, if we should forget the atrocities that happened, the Holocaust, how we should remember it. And so tell me, what have been your results, and can you show us also how art is actually still contributing to remembrance culture in Germany?
Yes, I mean, I think the first thing to say is why I became interested in studying Erinnerungskultur in Germany, which is I always had the sense that, oh wow, in Germany they had this tragic conflict happen in their country, but still have found ways to remember and have that live alongside the present day. And for instance, in the United States, we still have a contested history about the Civil War, about white supremacy. This continues to divide our nation, and it continues to be an issue that when we are trying to memorialize and we are trying to heal and reconcile, there's no unified voice or vision. And I think what's interesting about Erinnerungskultur is that it's a German social memory. There's a shared idea that this will not happen again. And so I think from that came the idea of this process. It's not just about remembering the past or saying here's a landmark and here's something that happened. It's also stating we don't want this to happen in the future. So I think this is really important in the framework of transitional justice because, I mean, this is a growing and evolving field, an area that so many scholars and practitioners alike continue to say, well, we need to be really have multidisciplinary approaches to this work for it to be strong and for us to hear multiple voices, for us to use storytelling to also show what, you know, whatever types of statistics we're finding, there's also real human experiences underlying this. And I think in Germany, I mean, transitional justice processes are still going on to this day, and there still is renewed efforts and fundings around memorialization specifically. And I think what's also great is that as more and younger people are starting to say, okay, this is what we want for our society, here's how we're going to make things better for our future, there is a sense of we need to remember. But that also means that the ways of remembering are evolving. So we're now in this opportunity to really say, how can we be creative? How can we be innovative? And the arts is a perfect way to embrace this transition. And I think what Lucia said earlier is absolutely perfect. Using arts and embedding arts into memorialization or transitional justice processes are making the unspeakable speakable. I mean, you can do so much with creative processes, whether it be songwriting, whether it be poetry, whether it be dance, movement, that you can't say when you're sitting maybe in a tribunal. Or, I mean, reparations, of course, are very important, but this leaves out an entire part of real experiences that we might not have a chance to hear. And for those of us somewhere completely distant from a conflict, maybe by generations, we might be able to understand better through a song than, you know, through a report that's filed away somewhere. So I mean, I think in my work, I mean, I looked only at a few. I mean, it was 4 case studies across Germany to get a sense of how can you not make something in the end, but how can you make your process be an arts-based process? I mean, looking at, there are so many things that are happening in Germany, and I think, I mean, I don't know if the photos are available. I can show a few examples of the ones that I was looking at in my research, but the idea is not about the end result. I mean, there are many...
I think the pics are available if you want.
Perhaps, yeah. So, I mean, while we're waiting for them to get up, yes, so here we have the Memory Void. This is a specific exhibition in the Jewish Museum in Berlin, and it's made to be interacted with, which was shocking to me the first time I visited it, because, I mean, this is a big void. It's a tower, and these are faces, pretty much faces of despair, very thick metal pieces, and it's made to be walked across, and it makes this very jarring, uncomfortable, metallic sound. It's made to also be a reflective space, to not shy away from thinking and reflecting what you've also experienced and learned in the museum. And so, you know, this really gets at education, of course, because it's in a museum, but also making spaces to reflect, even in this time, where you might, I mean, you're in the middle of Berlin, you might be doing something completely different, and there's still an opportunity to think deeply about your connection to the past. We can go to the next picture. So here is Topf in Sonne, which this is in Erfurt, and this now is a memorial site in a museum, but it's this on the same site where the gas chambers and the technology really for the concentration camps and a number of concentration camps across Germany during World War II were built and sold. I mean, a huge company as well. I mean, the #1 selling company. And so, I mean, it's parts of the original building are still there, but they have chosen to keep it and not erase this history, and to have students come and do projects and volunteer and be part of this, I mean, living and terrifying monument. Next picture, please. Here we have Die Suche, which is a comic book from the Anne Frank Zentrum in Berlin. And this actually was a comic book designed specifically for German curriculum in a number of states across Germany. So not only was it an artistic endeavor created, you know, for the enjoyment of a comic book, it really was, and this is when it comes to process, it was really designed with the idea of how can we not only teach a certain history, but how can we engage young people, how can we ask questions, how can we build narrative in a way that kind of changes this typical idea about memorialization or about learning about history, going on a field trip to Gedenkstätte, memory memorial, yeah, memory site. So, I mean, I think what's interesting is that it was not just, you know, a comic book writer who said, I'm going to make a comic book today. It was a process between artists, art teachers, educators, even some government officials that came together and said, we really have to be strategic and be really thoughtful about how we create this, in the end, piece of art. And the last picture, please. So here we have YOLO Cost. If you haven't seen it, it was a digital photography exhibition. And essentially, this artist really wanted to put this question. I mean, if we're having these memorial sites and we're not actually engaging people around what the history is, and we have people taking selfies and being what we would think of as disrespectful because we know this is the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin. What kind of knowledge about Erinnerungskultur is being passed down to future generations? What about never again is actually being transferred if it is so easy to have these fun pictures here. And so what he did was, there were 12 pictures. He transposed the selfies that he found across social media onto, of course, very shocking and real photos from concentration camps in Germany. So again, these are completely different projects, but with completely different results and outcomes and products. But the idea here is that you are able to take this shared history and use a process that is different, is new, is creative, and this, in some ways, impacts the way that people perceive the message, perceive memory in their day-to-day lives, and how that leads to this idea of, well, how do we take this into consideration now? We see the rise of anti-Semitic and racist attacks across Germany. We see a rise in xenophobia. This directly links to how people are thinking about, well, what is never again? So I think it's important to think about the ways in which we can start to think outside of our defined boxes and how to reach that goal.
Thank you, Maya. I would also get back to Lucia in Colombia. I mean, memorializing through art can be a very emotional thing, but is it not in contrast to finding neutral truth? So is there not a tension between memorialization through art in terms of, you know, emotions, maybe sometimes movies might be fictitious, and finding the truth? I mean, Lucia, you're working at the Truth Commission. Are there cases when this tension came across and when you thought, well, these art products are not really contributing to establishing what happened during the conflict, but rather just simply memorializing the conflict? What's your opinion on that, Lucia?
Sí, gracias.
Yes, thank you, Savai. I think that the difference is not that much. It's a little bit more about the difficulty of the reading that we have. We've trusted too much on reason. We've trusted too much on the political discourse and the academic discourse, and we've lacked confidence in the truth of art. So I do believe that, for instance, hip-hop, it's already narrating a truth, is narrating a fact in the life of the youth in popular neighborhoods, a truth we may have not seen or felt before and would have to learn how to read whatever is said in that lyric, as they call them, and the graffitis that are also the reality expression that they are going through. It's not just a poetic action. And for instance, we've been able to read through the knitting done by women when they place them over fabric. They place drawings over this fabric of what they've endured, things they can't even say themselves, or that they've mentioned in their songs, things that maybe they are not able to say. So I think that the difficulty goes more in us trying to understand that there is a place for knowledge in art. So it's not only for pleasure and aesthetic, but also a place for knowledge. And in that sense, I think we could think of it as a test, that some of those creative or poetic acts, a theater play that was made within a community, could also show truths that in other way we couldn't be able to capture or recollect. And I'm remembering right now from Svetlana that there is a truth that has been very difficult for us to communicate, and that is that truth that we feel, that truth that becomes a face, that becomes pain. And it's not just the telling of battles and heroes, or what's even worse, the storytelling from data. So to give it heart, feeling and emotion allows us to approach the dimension of tragedy. And in that sense, it is a truth that goes beyond facts, that goes beyond the purely casuistic or material, and that brings us the dimensions of tragedy on its more complete sense. So there are many, many examples and very few studies that have been carried out from the academia, for instance, on what are we being told about? What is art telling us? And from the Truth Commission, we have an online program every 15 days with artists that we're going to also do with communities and with their cultural and artistic practices in their communities to be able to read what is it that they're being telling us for quite some time from their practices.
Quite interesting, thank you. Ado, your movie, more building memories, emotional memories, or telling the truth? The one you are working on about your father?
Yeah, that will be a movie with archive footage of my father and footage that I filmed my father from 2017 till 2020. And yeah, that will be, my idea is actually to build some, it will be film about memory, and it will be also film about life. And my goal, my idea from the beginning, it was to make a film about men who remain normal after all horror things that he survived. The man who teach me not to hate other people. And that's what I'm really thankful to my father. That's, yeah.
Thank you, Ado. You brought in that art can also teach not to hate each other. And Maya, you already brought in the topic of xenophobia, rising discrimination as well here in Germany. That brings us to your song at the beginning. And now maybe it's the time to quickly explain. You also worked as a community manager, on inclusion and diversity in Minneapolis, actually, where now the protests happened last year, over the course of the last year. So you're very much involved as well in maybe also how art can separate, but also how art can help overcoming hate and discrimination. So tell us a bit about the song, and I know you also brought a second one.
Yes, yeah. I mean, this first song, you know, of course it's very upbeat, and I'm saying the words, "Get on the floor." And I wrote this a few years ago after yet another police killing of an unarmed black man in the United States. And it just was at a point in time where it felt like, and of course this is a few years ago, so it's a little ironic, but it felt like this is news we're hearing all the time. We're protesting in the streets, and then what happens? Not sure. Then something else happens, and the cycle continues. And I kind of felt like, you know, all of the fanfare and the social media posting about how people really want to change or care about things just kind of felt like a repetitive song. It's like a dance. And "Get on the floor," of course, sounds like, oh, get on the floor and let's dance. But it also refers to the very direct words of what police officers will say when you're stopped and asked to get on the floor, put your hands behind your back or put your hands on the ground. And so I use a lot of the wording that would be used in these very intense situations and put it in this very dancey, upbeat song, because it just really expressed to me this back and forth of how can change happen, and how can we move away from this violence if, I mean, it's just this repetitive cycle. I mean, for me, I mean, I'm not, I obviously came to sing and play guitar alongside this panel, but I wouldn't consider myself a musician. For me, music is something very personal, but in my work, it's always a tool. It's always something we can use to communicate what we're maybe not able to say or to put into words, going back to making the unspeakable speakable. I think as far as my work, to really try to break barriers to access and to find ways to be inclusive to communities that have been marginalized and have not had the opportunity to, I mean, in the work that I've done, participate in the arts. It's really important to start to start where the need is. I think too often we think about how we can make things diverse or how we can make things inclusive, and it really is a top-down approach. How do we think we should make it inclusive? Well, you have to start at the community level if it's really to serve the community. So for me, using the arts is always a way to do that, to open these conversations that we might not have had the opportunity to have before and might be uncomfortable, but I think it's always a starting point. I do have a song that I will sing next, and this is a song I wrote a very long time ago. I was working in an organization that was helping women escape from the cycle of sex trafficking, and they have a 14-week program which they're learning, how to write a resume, applying for jobs, this kinds of thing, supportive services. And as the program progresses, it gets more and more interpersonal, finding parts of self-worth, finding ways to heal, finding ways to reconcile with yourself and your family. A very intensive program, and of course 14 weeks is a very short period of time. But at the end of the program, it really was a moment to say this is a turning point, and having these very real conversations and facing yourself in the mirror, so to speak, are always a starting point for reconciliation. And so I wrote a song for one of their graduation ceremonies, and this was another turning point of sorts. After I did this, it was, a very moving and touching ceremony, but then we started to hold arts classes at the organization where I was working, really, completely out of their realm of the types of activities they were doing at the time, but this really changed things to be able to say, okay, maybe it's time we aren't going to need to expose all of our trauma at the table week after week. We can write poetry, we can have dance classes, we can have, there was a choir at some point. So I think this still goes to what is very important to me, which is process. How can we still reach the same goals, which is, in this case, really being supportive to our communities, especially communities that have been discriminated against. But how can we do that in a really intentional and artistic way? So I'll play this song for you now.
There are days, when you're gonna be just fine. And then there are the others, when your name is on the line. When all you have is the choice you make and the days left to come. You're feeling like you have lost more than you have ever won. Well, can I tell you that you're lovely? Can I show you the key? And can I let you know how beautiful you are to me? Let me lead you to the mirror and take it down off the wall. 'Cause you should know without looking, girl, just how beautiful you are. I can't stand to see the past float through your eyes, but I want you to you pretty? Can I show you the key? And can I let you know how beautiful you are to me? And let me lead you to the mirror and take it down off the wall. 'Cause you should know without looking, girl, just how beautiful you are. And I don't know if we'll be alright. I don't know if we'll be alright. All I know is if we pray through the night, then we'll be alright. When we're running fast and falling hard, it's true. There's nobody doing it better than me and you. 'Cause we are fighters, we are winners in this world. So listen to your mothers, sisters and daughters, every woman, every girl. And can I tell you that you're pretty? Can I show you the key? Can I let you know how beautiful you are to me? Let me lead you to the mirror and take it down off the wall. 'Cause you should know without looking, girl, just how beautiful you are. Danke.
Thank you, Maya. I hope all our audience out there on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or wherever is applauding as well. Thank you so much for this song. You said this song is a community song when women graduated. What does this mean for you personally, this song?
I mean, for me personally, it's a song I take with me everywhere. I mean, it's here today, of course, and it wasn't just for this. I mean, it started as something for the graduation, but it quickly became something, I mean, for all women, this is what it means to me personally. The idea is that sometimes it's very easy to feel like your strength is gone or it's not there. But resiliency is so key and so important, and it is something that builds and grows within you. And so this is a reminder that, especially to women, we are resilient. I mean, to everyone, of course, and especially when we're talking about this today. But for me personally, it's about the resiliency we build as women in this world.
Thank you, Maya. That also brings very much nicely to another movie we produced actually together last year. Also, our screen writer Sophia is also here as well. Actually, a short movie about discrimination and diversity, about building resilience, but not necessarily from the point of view of an adult, but from the point of view of a very small kid here in Germany. And I think it's better, before I say too much about Christchild, it's not the right time to talk about Christchild at the moment. But let's watch first the movie, the Christchild movie, and which talks about actually a very, very strong young lady. And then we will talk a bit about resilience and also Ado's experience of resilience, Lucia's experience of resilience building. But first of all, film ab.
Hallo, wie ist dein Name?
Aya.
Okay, Aya, wir sind ein bisschen überrascht. Das ist das Vorsprechen für die neue Rolle des Christkinds.
Mom, come, I think this is something for me.
This isn't for us anymore. We have to go. We're in a rush. Let's go.
Ah ja, wie viele offizielle Auftritte hat das Christkind? Etwa 150. Ja, korrekt, Aya. Bitte einen Applaus für Aya. Oh, das war richtig gut. Richtig gut. Gut, Aya. Dankeschön.
Aya? Yeah, but those are girls. They're gonna be mad if you win.
Ja, das ist schön.
Wir würden dir zuerst die Möglichkeit geben, etwas vorzutragen und dann würden wir dir noch ein paar Fragen stellen. Okay? Was hast du uns denn mitgebracht?
Ich wollte etwas singen.
Okay, bitteschön.
Es ist ein Witz, oder? Ja, also ganz ehrlich, manche Leute sollten sich vielleicht mal vorher Gedanken machen, für was sie sich.
Ach, komm schon. Das wird schon. Ich meine, die letzten Tage haben wir wirklich nichts anderes gemacht, als seine Texte zu üben. Lass doch gut sein.
Ganz ehrlich, ich verstehe auch nicht, was sie hier macht, weil sie passt jetzt überhaupt nicht ins Muster, ne? Die passt überhaupt nicht ins Bild.
Hab ich auch schon gedacht. Das ist irgendwie ein bisschen.
Also, da ich mir schon ein bisschen.
Und die nächste bitte? Wer ist Katja? Aya?
Ah ja.
Gut, komm bitte mit. Die Jury wartet auf dich.
Guten Tag. Viel Erfolg dir.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Okay, danke, Aya. Setz dich wieder. Wir würden jetzt noch ein paar Fragen stellen. So, nehmt bitte Platz. Vielen Dank euch allen erst einmal für die so engagierte und zahlreiche Teilnahme hier am Vorsprechen. Ihr habt uns die Entscheidung wirklich nicht einfach gemacht, aber wir haben eine Gewinnerin gefunden. Und die neue Rolle für das Christkind geht an
Thank you so much. Ado, you were the film director with this movie. What does the movie tell you about like diversity or building resilience we saw a young Aya working on her own dreams. What does it mean for you?
Yeah, I'm very happy that I worked on this project together with other international students from Erfurt, and here is as well Sofia from the state, yes. And I'm really happy that she wrote this script, and in the end we selected her script to film, and we make it as well before that happened very tragic event in the state, I think in the May last year. And it was, with this film you could see the power of the film language and how actually things in reality around us we don't give attention. And in this film we could see discrimination that is in every angle for every single situation, especially towards black people. And with this film, you know, with the art, we are sending a strong and powerful message. We know, of course, that in German tradition is not, maybe it's not possible that black girl is chosen to be a Christ child, but this is also the last sequence of the film is actually, you know, like we create movies and we don't explain everything. Everyone could understand in their way. Maybe she won, maybe she didn't. But this is the power of the art. No. So.
Maya, you also played a small role for you. And I mean, you on your own are experiencing discrimination on a daily basis, I would say. Maybe not on a daily basis, but more than often. So what does this movie tell? What story does this movie tell? Is it only about a small girl wanting to become a Christ child, or is it even more?
Yeah, I mean, I think now seeing it after such a long time, what I really appreciate is that the story is being told, a story is being told. I think so often it's very easy for everyday types of discrimination or microaggressions to be brushed off, to say, okay, well, I'm just not going to let it bother me, or someone looked at me a certain way on the subway today. I mean, this is something that builds and grows over years and years and years if you're experiencing discrimination, especially in an environment where you are different, you are considered other. I think what's also very interesting in the case of Germany is that we're not always having this dialogue, especially if we're talking about race. I mean, this is still a little bit of a bad word to say. And so I think watching this is really amazing to see that we're opening that dialogue and we're using a very traditional German story of the Christkind to do so. And I think that's what's really powerful, is how we tell our stories and how we contextualize them, because, I mean, as we can see also, the kids are speaking German. They are integrated in their own way into German culture, but still feel this difference, feel like there's something out of reach, in her case, the role of the Christkind. So to me, it's very special, and it really just reinforces that idea. I mean, this opens a dialogue in a way I don't maybe feel comfortable doing that somewhere, you know, with friends or somewhere out, or even in a panel, you know. It's a new and uncomfortable thing to do in this context. But with the film, we can open that dialogue, and I think that's what's really powerful.
Thank you, Maya. I also would like to give my voice, or a voice back to Colombia, to Lucia. We do know that Colombia is an extremely heterogeneous and very diverse country. So you are not only working, as you mentioned beforehand, for example, with indigenous communities. working also with Afro-Colombian communities and with all other communities. What does art, or how do you overcome, for example, separation between these different communities, and how do you build community through art in Colombia, through art maybe between Afro-Colombian communities or among indigenous communities, or even just simple Colombians? Lucia.
Sí,
Yes.
bueno.
Well, before anything, I wanted to tell you what a beautiful presentation from Mayo Enado, and I wanted to replicate that there would not be a better way to communicate so much feeling, so much depth, if it wasn't through art. Thank you so much for what you've shown us and let us hear. The truth is that art has allowed us in such a diverse country to recognize ourselves, the efforts to build that plurality and the recognitions of differences has fallen short in such a large and diverse country such as Colombia. However, it's art that has allowed us to find it. Just a short time ago, Colombian music was only on the radio stations. We only played it 1 hour a day, and it was mandatory. It was by law because it wasn't actually even considered music that was of high audience or high public amount. Today, it's the opposite. Colombia has worldwide recognition, enormous recognition due to our artistic work and especially to our musical songs and our musical work. Especially that musical work comes from Afro communities, more specifically the Afro communities in Colombia have for most music. And Maya must know this quite well. Art has been a huge expression, an innate expression in Afro peoples all over. It comes from the heart. It's their best way to represent themselves, the best way to actually become visible before the rest of the country. And indigenous communities as well. We have 120 indigenous communities that we don't even know much about, many of them, and that we have only seen, and in one way, via art and via their rituals and via maybe documentaries and certain times via short films or cinema. And this has allowed us to see that we do have a country which is like a native forest, a rich country, and its wealth lies in differences, and that we have to work on including these sectors within the population, because obviously Colombia is obviously a very racist and classist country, and many of the armed conflict factors that we've identified lie precisely in those colonial categories that have not allowed us to value the rich and the wealth in those cultures, that have not allowed us to join together with them and build a bond and with those territories throughout the nation. And I think we have advanced in the last few years. We have advanced, but because of those communities forced themselves, because of push, because art has allowed this to happen, not because it was a political decision, because we continue to have governments that deeply ignore huge sectors of the population. And obviously, the indigenous and Afro sectors have always been deeply excluded from the attention by all governments and the valuation, or they're not valued. So we trust that art continues to be what makes all of this wealth evident, and that we, in our final report, in the delivery of the final report, we're going to go through huge efforts, because much of the language that we use to communicate truth and to communicate those deficits that we have, that fundamentally have to do with just that, with a recognition of differences that have that have abandoned populations and let them to be on their own, or has eliminated, will be via those cultural and artistic practices. We're working quite hard with many artistic productions, with many documentaries, with scenes where the difference is the fundamental value, which actually creates that country where we want to live, which is in harmony.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Lucia. Let's talk about also a bit of difficulties. I think for most of the time we have spoken about the beauty of art or how art can overcome separation, or how art can make speakable the unspeakable. But Lucia, I mean, you spoke about Colombia as a highly polarized country, as one of a racist country. Do you also face difficulty with your approach of bringing art in truth building and in the peace process? And what kind of difficulties have you faced with your own approach of bringing people together? Lucia, I think you have to unmute you.
Es mejor con el micrófono, sí, muchas
Better
gracias.
with the microphone, yes, much better. I think precisely it's via art that we have been able to communicate with the more radical sectors, really, and with the indifferent people, the people that are expressing indifference, because we don't have that much we don't generate polarization that much via art, because art moves and it arrives in a more subtle fashion, despite being strong, despite having a hard and strong message. So we have ratified this and throughout all of these years, because almost all activities that we have done related to dialogues with communities, in communities, with certain sectors have been accompanied by those cultural and artistic expressions. And they've been able to touch hearts. And I believe, or we believe, we continue to believe that that's how we're going to continue to better communicate the results of the final report. We have a series of programs and projects. For example, we have a cinema cycle. We have several theater plays in the works with very hard content. We have a great musical bet as well that we're betting on, and theater that actually showcases artistic organizations from the territories that have always been very powerful and expressing with their artistic language what they have suffered, what they have lived. So we are before a political scenario which, yes, it's very difficult. There's high polarization and things are sometimes not allowed to be heard, but we believe precisely, and we're betting on art to be our voice. And we also know that many have achieved awareness building when cinema showcase things, when documentaries via mass media have been able to showcase a reality which is undisputable, because this is not a theoretical production. This is not fiction. This is not political things. These are productions that are done in the communities, with the communities, from the communities, the majority of the times, as has been demonstrated by Maya with what she told us about.
Ado, you also said that the war is still in the heads of the people. Do you face difficulties with your art, with Angel of Srebrenica, or with the other films you produced? Do you face difficulties in Bosnia and Herzegovina? Are you still harassed, for example, for the art you produce, for the movies you produce?
Of course, people are, denying and they are ignoring topics about the memory. One part of the country, don't support it and don't recognize it as something that is important. But I think I will say those are small percents. And I think more people are supporting it. But of course, when you have also a percent of people who are ignoring and who has a space in the television, on social media today, that everyone could contribute even without sense, it's some kind disturbing. But I want to say also, and to mention my friend Ljubisha, who is tonight here with his German wife. He lives in Leipzig, and he's also from Srebrenica, and we used to work on a film festival in Srebrenica many years together. And our idea was to create some kind image of Srebrenica, that Srebrenica is not only recognized with the war and you know, horror what happened there. And it was, let's say, successful festival. But until we stayed there, it was successful. What I want to say with this, to make some art or cultural projects, you need people. After that we left Srebrenica, I have to say like this, because sometimes you cannot stay in one place that you don't see some perspectives, some future. People who stayed there, actually they were not, they didn't have capacity to continuing to work on this festival. That was, let's say, I would say my baby, my child. It was my passion. And there is no money that you could work for that festival. Making art, it means you are working 24 hours. And if you think to make art only for money, you have to do another job. Because making art, it's with heart, it's passion. It's something that when you create, you have to hit people in their heart. And to this festival, actually, we believed in that idea, and we have many people coming to the festival. Of course, we had as well idea not to screen movies about war in Srebrenica, because its wound is still very, very open. People, for them, it's difficult to digest. And, you know, 26 years is past, and it's not difficult. So we were showing other films. We were bringing different regional and international authors. We created bridges, and we make all people together in the cinema. That was something big success, and I'm very happy about that. So art always could, you know, communicate and make people together. It's what also Maya said, like unspeakable, speakable, to create bridges, to create relationship through the dance that we hear, through the sound, music, paintings, movies. You know, you are creating so much relationship. You are traveling in other countries. You are learning about. You're hearing the language, seeing tradition. You know, everything is possible through the movies. You are
Thank you, Ado.
Destroying all borders.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually the core theme of the festival, of the Globe Festival here as well, right? Border crossing solidarities. And crossing borders also brings us to a current project that's actually happening in Colombia, right? You said that 26 years, I mean, Maya, we have more than 50 years here of remembrance culture. I mean, it's such a long time, and it is still very, very, very current. How can culture stay something alive? Maybe a last word from you, and then we go back to our Colombia.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think where we are now is about transition. Culture is not an add-on or an extra to our everyday lives. It's essential. It's a pillar of how we live and how we communicate and how we build communities and how we relate to each other. And I think, especially with the past year, with this pandemic, people are really taking this to heart and seeing it's not just something that you can buy in a store. It's not just something that, I don't know, that comes out of thin air. It is, it's what connects us. And I think this is where we're headed. And I think this will only get stronger.
Thank you, Maya, and thank you, Ado, for joining. We go back to Colombia, to a very current project, because let's say the youngest peace process from Bosnia-Herzegovina or Germany, the peace process in Colombia is not that old. It started in 2016 between the biggest rebel group, Las FARC, and the government. And I welcome everyone who joins now for the concert of Coro Reconciliación. And I just want to quickly also ask Lucia, you were the director quite a while ago. This project, you said at the beginning that this project bringing together former combatants of the FARC and victims of the armed conflict is a very important one. So, but as far as I understand, Maya and Ado, I mean, 5 years after the conflict, that is still a very short period of time. Is this really the time already ripe for such a project to bring together former combatants and victims?
Bueno, yo creo que todavía nos falta mucho, pero realmente las experiencias.
Actually, I think we still need a long road to go, but the experiences of the recognizing of responsibilities on the part of those that are actually responsible and the offering of forgiveness on the side of the victims has been amazing, quite meaningful, and will open the pave the way for everybody to do so. Experiences are also very varied in terms of art, very spontaneous artistic expressions within communities. There are a lot of productive activities that are being carried out in the camps where the ex-combatants are located, those that have articulated with the communities for those productive projects. There has been, for instance, soccer games, watching movies together that talk about the conflicts and that combatants with communities together. And so, as I was saying, in transitional justice, this opens a way to reconciliation, because the idea is not so much to just to understand, and the idea is not just to punish, but to actually move ahead upon reconciliation. And this is something that I think we do. Although there is a trauma from so many years of war that, of course, inhibits this to be a massive response, but I think it's basically provided us interesting experiences and how embraced it's been within society as well.
Thank you so much, Lucia. And I think that's now time to move on to our not yet concert, but I think you are very curious, hopefully now, about the Coro Reconciliación, what this core is really about. I thank Ado Hasanovic for joining the panel discussion. I thank Maya Weisinger for joining the panel discussion. And I thank very much Lucia Gonzalez from the Truth Commission in Colombia for joining the panel discussion. And in order to move on to the concert, let me just introduce also Maria Catalina Pietro, who is the executive director of the Coro Reconciliación in Medellin from the Philharmonic Orchestra. Maria Catalina, what does this project mean for you personally?
Well, hi to everyone. This project for me personally means the possibility to change the history of this country. I am 38 years old, and practically my whole life I have lived in the middle of the Colombian conflict. I was raised in Bogota, so I lived the conflict by TV, but nonetheless, we were part of this conflict for our whole life. So the possibility to have in the same place acquire with former combatants from different guerrillas, there are FARC or ELN or whatever, paramilitary and victims. It's very meaningful for me personally, and I think that for the country, it's also very, very meaningful. It's the possibility of a new country, it's the possibility of a new meaning, and it's the possibility of hope.
Thank you, Maria. Before we go to the concert, we have produced, actually, we thank very much also CAPAS, the German Colombian Peace Institute, who helped us, a very short video about the Coro Reconciliación. So we showed that video, and then, yeah, you also know about the Coro Reconciliación.
Cantar con este grupo
pues es muy chévere. Nunca había
To
como
sing with this group is
cantado
really
pues con
exciting. I had
personas
never
y eso, porque sí soy
sang
como muy
with
tímida.
other people
Y
because I'm
entonces
quite
me
shy.
siento muy bien cantar con
So
ellos,
I feel very good
escucharnos,
to
que es
sing
lo
with
más
them.
importante.
A la justicia y la verdad, amo esta tierra donde nací, soy colombiano.
Para mí el espacio del coro, el encuentro, es un encuentro sagrado. Y digo sagrado que es buscar que desde que damos el primer paso para ingresar al salón se nos vuelva un templo donde lo que estamos sintiendo lo dejemos en la puerta. No es desprendernos de nuestras individualidades, sino dar un pasito más adelante.
En tiempos buenos o en tiempos malos, por lo que amo me quedaré aquí. Una canción para sembrar un porvenir.
Para mí cantar es como despejar y como descansar mi mente y mi espíritu de tantas cosas difíciles que hemos pasado en la vida. Entonces, cantar, y sobre todo pues cantar para el Coro Reconciliación, significa también perdonar.
Viento, una cometa, para el lienzo un pincel.
Podemos construir desde las diferencias, podemos construir desde el perdón, desde la sanación, desde la reparación. Entonces, creo que eso es lo que hemos transmitido al público en general.
Un columpio para la infancia y al oído un acordeón para la guerra nada.
Por más que sepas cantar y no cantes con el corazón, no te expreses, no seas alegre, pues ahí no vas a sentir nada y no le vas a expresar a las demás personas algo muy bonito, que es lo que estamos haciendo.
Para la guerra nada.
Thank you. Yeah, the translation is again activated, Justus? Yes, okay. Maria, was it hard to bring ex-combatants and victims together? I mean, how do they collaborate with you in this project? Maybe just 1-2 sentences on how that really works out. I mean, tell us a little bit, how can we imagine this collaboration between victims and former combatants?
Well, to be honest, we thought that it would be very difficult, and we were very hesitant about that at the beginning. But to be completely honest, it wasn't. I mean, we just opened a call for applications through the different organizations that work with victims and with former combatants. And they just arrived to the first rehearsal. We consciously decided not to put labels on them. We needed for them not to know who was a former combatant and who was a victim. They were just singers, and the way we divided them was according to their voices. So we divided them into sopranos and tenor and basses and baritones. So naturally, they were just sitting together, one combatant next to a victim and next to a guerrilla member, a former guerrilla member. So it was very natural. It was only after 4 months of rehearsals that they actually started knowing who was who in the choir. So it was very special, like the natural way they interacted together. The only thing they wanted to do was just to sing, to learn together, and to have a new meaning of their relationship. So actually nowadays, 2 years after that, they consider themselves a family, and that's something very special. In Christmas, they get together with their own families. So it wasn't hard, and I think it has sent a very special and very powerful message to us, the regular Colombian society, that it's possible to actually change the way we relate ourselves, and we change the meaning how we relate.
Thank you, Catalina. I think we decided actually that we want to let the music speak, so we don't want to come back actually after the concert really to the audience, but and to a discussion, but really want just simply that the music stays in our heart after that. But in order to give you a little bit, because it's in Spanish, the music, but in order, and we don't want to translate actually the songs while singing, but the Coro Reconciliación and Maria Catalina just asked me to read out as a poem one of the songs to you. And I thank very much Coro Reconciliación for this collaboration and for this truly amazing project. And I will read that out, this kind of poem. It's the last song in the concert. But after that, I would say nicht Film ab, sondern Konzert ab. So the concert will start after I read just the poem. And thank you a lot for all your collaboration. So the song. For the wind, a kite. For the canvas, a brush. For the nap, a hammock. For the soul, a cake. For the silence, a word. For the ear, a snail. A swing for childhood. And an accordion in my ear. For war, nothing. For the chorus, a tune. For the rain, a song. A hug to heal your wounds with love. Past the border, open roads. And seeds to sow. For the wasteland, respect. And to peace, opportunity. For war, nothing. For the soup, and a racacha, a shaman for the ritual. The ajipa, the empanada, of panela, a spring. For exile, hope. For your tenacious fight, for the trip, a backpack. And your land in the heart. For war, nothing. To love, I want God. To sing, I want joy, memory, and reconciliation. For the peace of my soul, for the history that I carry. Etched in my heart and deep in my being. Hope and forgiveness. For war, nothing. Fly, free like birds, on a starry night, the riffles shut up, and beautiful things replace them. In the sky, a star that illuminates when walking. For the soul, the memories make us soap. For the war, nothing. Enjoy the concert.